Morning, guys. Part 3 of bear hunting. It's a big subject, a lot to talk about. I don't know if I can get it all in on one episode here, we'll see. But today's subject is bear baits and baiting. And it's kind of funny, you know, of all the years I've been hunting black bears, you run into a lot of people that know nothing about black bears, but it seems like wherever you are, if there ever is a conversation about using bait, everybody seems to know what to use for bait for taking black bears, and generally they're wrong. There's some myths about that, like, you know, it's supposed to really stink, really smell a lot, and that's just not true. Black bears will eat carrion, but they'd much rather have fresh meat when it comes to meat, just like humans. And I've had bear baits in the woods that have gotten to be really ripe, you know, and crawling with maggots, and imagine that. The bears wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't touch it, you know. But give them fresh meat. Not only do they prefer that, but it'll draw them, the odor of it will draw them from great distances downwind. So, but early on I learned that there was really a difference between the way bears reacted to meats. So, now, in the baiting process, you know, let's talk about a hunt. And this relates to how much bait you're going to use and how often you should bring bait and that kind of thing. But let's talk about a typical hunt. Here in Minnesota, we can start putting out bait for bears 2 weeks before the season begins. And and that's an important time. You're not only providing bait, but you're getting the bear used to coming there, and you're teaching the bear that he's perfectly safe when he comes there to feed. He doesn't have to worry. If he had to, then he'd become nocturnal and he'd be miserable about that. But anyway, so 2 weeks. Well, so you're going to feed this bear for 2 weeks, and it would be impossible, or it would be impractical, really, to expect that you can provide enough food for that bear to eat for 14 days. You know, let's say he's a 400-pound bear. He's going to eat 50. He can eat 50 pounds of bait in a single day, and so that would be an awful lot of bait. But you don't have to provide food for him for every one of those days, 14 days, to be successful at taking a bear. I've known so-called outfitters for bear hunting that just brought out a little half a pail of bait to a bait site daily, you know, a 5-gallon pail, and dump it and throw some sticks on it, and that was it. That's a pretty paltry way of baiting, but they still get a bear, and but you know, it usually doesn't work as often. The odds are a lot poorer that you're going to get a bear of any kind when you bait like that. But when you're dealing with a big bear, you got to hold his interest. You got to make him think, even after the bait's been gone for a few days, that and he goes out foraging throughout his larger 30 square mile home range for 4 days or so. He's going to be thinking about that. That's going to be on his schedule. The trails he uses, the routes he uses while he's foraging food in its vast home range will always lead back to that bait site, because it was the best amount of food he's had in ages, and it's all gone now, but he's going to come back. And so you don't have to worry about that. He's going to come back, even if he runs out of bait 2, 3, 4 days before you get back to bringing more bait in there. You don't have to bring in bait every day, like a lot of people believe. And even guides believe. In fact, that can be counterproductive. The more often you bring in bait to a bait site, the more likely it becomes that you're going to disturb that bear by your presence or your approach while he's there eating. If there's only a little amount there, and the bear comes in and he a little half pail like that of something, maybe fish, which isn't a good bear bait, and people argue about that. But anyway, he might come back several times during the day looking to see if more bait is there, because, gee, this person that brings the bait comes every day. He kind of expects that. And that being the case, your chances of disturbing that bear while it's feeding are pretty good. And once that happens, that bear becomes completely nocturnal or doesn't come back at all anymore. It's counterproductive. I've found that it works much better if you bring a large amount of bait once a week. You go in only once between 10 o'clock in the morning and let's say 3 in the afternoon. In my book I wrote 4, but I think 3 would be better. But that little time period, I've had a really big bear come in at one time at 2:30, so that can happen. But so I'm supposed to be safe. You could say let's say between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. That's the time to bring in the bait. Safe time. The bear's bedding somewhere. He might be bedding only 50, 100 yards away. He might be gone in his vast range. He might be several miles away when you bring in the bait. There's no chance of disturbing him at all in that case. But you can't tell. I know I've been really surprised by this on several occasions where I've gone to my bait site really quietly and carefully, like I do, like when I'm going out there with my bow, and get into my stand and be sitting there for hours, and all of a sudden there's a bear. Right. Obviously it's been laying down there. It stands up and looks around. It's right down there on the edge of this bog. And it said, holy cow, that bear has been there all afternoon, right there, that close. I know grizzly bears will often bed real close to any meat that they've buried. They'll maybe kill a moose, and after they're done feeding, cover it with dirt so that other animals can't get to it and or spoil it. Like the point is they can be really close, and that gives you an eerie feeling when you're up there, like say in Yukon Territory, Alaska, and you're going through all these thick alders, and all of a sudden there's this opening, and dirt and flies buzzing around, and you smell that meat, and the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up because that grizzly might be really close. Well, same with the black bears, that can happen. I knew one that was up in Aiken County when we first started hunting that bedded really close to where the bait was. So, but at any rate, whatever the time, that's the time. You get on the schedule, and when you're bringing in bait, you don't worry about noise. When you bring in bait, in fact, it's good to make noise. I haul in my bait on a big, long plastic toboggan. It's got raised edges, and I drill holes in it so I can tie things down on there and they won't fall off when you're pulling that toboggan out to the bait site. And it's noisy. And even if the bear isn't close by, it may say it's laying down 100 yards away, but it'll hear you. And so, oh, here comes the food, You get on a schedule, and that during the day it's a comfortable time for the bear, middle of the day. And then they hear you going out. They said, oh, now he's gone. So now it's safe to go there and feed for a while. And he isn't going to come back for a whole week. This is you set the schedule up with the bear, and the bear learns it. He'll remember that. So anyway, you bring in, what I prefer is to bring in lots of food early. But now, let's say, what I usually do is that the first day that you can begin baiting, 2 weeks before the opener, I'll go in with 150 pounds of bait. Various kinds of bait, we'll get into that, but on the sled. And about 50 pounds, 50 to 70 pounds of that bait, of that 150 pounds, will be meat. Now, the kind of meat we use is meat scraps. All the years that we've been bear hunting, I would buy meat scraps from a butcher, preferably a country butcher, away from the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, maybe halfway up to where I'm going to be bear hunting. Some little town and locker plant where they butcher cattle and chickens and whatnot. I like to go to those places because more than likely there won't be a lot of competition for the meat there. There's butchers here in town in Minneapolis, one in a suburb not far from where I live, where you can buy meat scraps for bear bait. And it usually costs about 10 cents a pound. But the problem there is, even on day one, there could be 2, 3, maybe a couple dozen bear hunters that'll go there and ask, want to buy the food. They'll say, I want so much, like I would go in there and say, what I want is I want 8 50-pound boxes, cardboard boxes, of meat scraps. Can't have any bone, it can have a lot of fat, but no bone. Bones aren't legal now here in the state. But I want 8 boxes frozen. And I'll tell them that well before I'm going to start baiting. I might go in there 2 months before it's legal to bait. And as soon as I know I'm going to get a bear license in the lottery, I'll go order my meat. And that's a lot of meat. We're talking maybe 200 pounds total, or because each hunter, like if I'm going to hunt a big bear, I want 2 baits. I don't want just one. If you have 2 baits, you can almost bet something's going to happen at one of them where you aren't going to have a chance to get a bear there, even though everything looked perfect. Some guy went in there and ruined it for you. Your biggest problem in bear hunting is other hunters, not the bears themselves, but other hunters. But anyway, to make sure I'm going to get a bear, I personally want 2 bait sites. And so what I'm going to provide is bait 4 times. One at the beginning of the baiting time, one a week later. That's still a week ahead of the bear hunting season. Then the beginning of the 3rd week, opening day, you're going to want to have a full supply of bait there in your bait cribs. There's 2 of them, and then you got to have backup, because maybe you'll hunt a few days and you don't see a bear. So, well, I got to come back next week. Well, if you don't have more bait, you got to have at least a week of backup bait. There's nothing more miserable than running out of bait. You have a bear coming, he's a big one, and now you're out of bait. And what do? You go to a little local grocery store, you go to a locker plant, you don't have a chance to get any meat scraps that late. All the meat scraps are all spoken for, all over the state by that time for bear hunting. So then you go to the store and so you buy some bacon. That's pretty expensive bear bait, in volume. Yeah, you got to have a fair amount of bait there to provide that bear. So you need a full amount of bait. Again, another 150 pounds per those 2 bait sites. So that's what you're looking at here. Strangely, one of the skills you don't hear about of being a good bear hunter is being pretty good at accumulating bait. having enough bait to take a bear. And when you're hunting a big bear, that's a lot more bait. Then you can get along with lesser amounts for small bears, but that shouldn't be your goal. But you should be thinking big bear, you know. Okay, so now you're getting an idea. We're going to need a lot of bait, you know, to set this up. And but especially when it comes to meat scraps, you want to reserve those early. Get to a butcher early, well before other hunters start putting in their orders, and tell them exactly what you want. I want 8 cardboard boxes, 50 pounds in each one, of meat scraps frozen. And you'll pick them up each week before you know, 4 boxes or 2 boxes each week before the season begins. Then you'll pick up the remaining part when you go up on before the opener, that kind of thing, and pay them. And if you're lucky, you can get some for 10 cents a pound like that. It's not a bad deal. That'll be your most expensive bait, but your most important bait, your most productive bait. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Here's another thing. Every really big bear I've ever gotten, I didn't get till the 4th day. And the reason is that they have a, you know, when you get up there on opening day, and your bait's all gone. This big bear has been coming to your bait sites. And by the way, you know, a big bear will have a 30 square mile or roughly area of a home range area that he wanders through. This is his. It might overlap with some other bigger bears, but not with sows with cubs. They won't be in that area. These bigger bears will be in there. And if you put out 2 bait sites within a 30 square mile area where you found some tracks like 9 inches long, hind tracks, you're wasting half your bait. You're putting it, both sites are only good for the same bear. Don't be stuck with that kind of a situation. You want to be baiting 2 big bears. So your bait sites for when you're hunting a big bear should be at least 6-7 miles apart. If they're that far apart, it's you're pretty sure that you're baiting 2 different big bears. Now, that's a lot of scouting, I know, but that's part of bear hunting. Another thing I'd like to mention at this point is that, you know, there are a lot of black bears in North America. Here in Minnesota, we have a huge number of black bears. Ontario, just north of us in Canada, has a huge number. In fact, a lot of black bears in Canada and Yukon Territory and that southern panhandle of Alaska has a lot of black bears as well. But as many as there aren't near as many black bears as there are white-tailed deer, for example. Practically every state in the United States where, you know, there's whitetails, that doesn't include California. West Coast, that's mostly blacktails there. There are up to 1 million deer in each state. Some states even more, like Michigan. Well, there's nowhere near that many black bears anywhere. And the thing is, you know, whitetails can have 1 to 4 fawns every year, and they can double the numbers every year. Black bears only have anywhere from 1 to 4. Usually, by the time those cubs are yearlings, there's only maybe 2 of the 4 left. Something happens to a whole bunch of them, and wolves maybe even get them, and who knows what else. But anyway, they don't multiply as rapidly, you know, and they only have their cubs every 2 years. They don't have them every year. And they don't even start having cubs until the sow is about 4 years old or older. And so not a lot of black bears. They're wonderful game animals and really exciting to hunt. But the point is, you can't waste them. You can't wound one and lose one. That would be terrible. You can't let that happen. So, so when you're bear hunting, you got to be sure about everything, including your shooting and where you hit a bear, things of that sort. So keep that in mind. No waste hunting. You don't wound one and lose one. I've known people who wounded them, and I helped one guy. I talked to one guy who spent 4 days tracking a wounded bear, and one he had wounded with a bow, and he got it. And by golly, that was really, really, really fine tracking on his part, and it was really good that he could do that. A lot of guys, if the bear doesn't die quickly, they're afraid to go after him, and especially like at night. Here it's sundown, right? The sun's gone down, a half hour it's going to be dark, and here comes the bear now. And everything works out really good, and you shoot the bear, and all of a sudden it's dark. And the bear ran. Well, they almost always run. It's like a tank taking off after they're hit. But if they're hit well, they probably only go 17 yards, 20. That's a common distance if you hit them properly, both lungs and the heart. 17 yards is about as far as they're going to go. I had one really big one, fatally hit, that went 150 yards through an elder swamp. What a mess. By the time I got help, somebody to help me track it, it was full dark. And we were out there with flashlights, with a bow, only one armed was me with a bow. But good blood trail through that swamp. And we went through it. We kept looking ahead for the bear. And a black bear is hard to see in the dark. And from what I've heard, it's another story, but the guide tells me one of the worst things that you can run into in a case like that, and you're trailing them in the dark, and all of a sudden you see some glowing eyes ahead. And you know what that means? No, well, that's the bear? I said, yeah, but it's a live bear. If it's dead, then you aren't going to see any glowing eyes. So it's alive, so now what do? And you're there armed with a bow. Yeah, you got to finish that bear. And it's in all this thick cover, it's really miserable. And when they lay down, because they're wounded, they're going to be laying in a direction, but looking back at their back trail. A good friend of mine had that happen, and he didn't get out there until the next morning because he didn't dare try to finish the bear. And he went out there with his guide, and they got close to one in the daytime. Of course, they didn't see any glowing eyes. It was daytime, but all of a sudden, here was the bear rushing right toward him. And he was carrying his bow because he figured, well, I'd be pretty weak and have a chance for a finishing shot with his bow. But it wasn't that way. But fortunately, his guide was carrying a rifle, and the guide finished it while it was charging him. But it was a pretty scary situation. Another thing I'd like to mention, think of things like this, don't hunt a dump bear. I've known people that just key on dump bears. They're kind of easy, a whole bunch of them, on this landfill out in the woods somewhere, and they'll hunt fringes of that. A lot of bears out there. In fact, one of the biggest bears ever taken in Minnesota was taken at a fringe of a place like that. Well, I've had guys who hunt dump bears who are always anxious to give away bear meat, which is kind of unusual because bear meat is so darn good. And the reason is because dump bears don't taste very good. So don't hunt dump bears. They're easy, but you're not going to be really happy with the flavor of the meat you're going to get from a bear like that. So leave those bears alone. Get out in the woods, hunt wild bears. They smell like blueberries, or when you field dress, they smell nice. And the fat that they have is tasty. It's the tastiest fat there is. It adds huge flavor to the meat. So Anyway, don't hunt dumb bears. Okay, back to business here about bait. So now we're thinking, I'm telling you, we're going to provide a lot of bait, and we're only going to provide the bait once a week to begin with, and midday between 10 and 2 o'clock. That's the only time. Never in the evening, never in the morning. That's terrible. You're just looking for trouble if you do that. And don't you dare, if you've done that, don't even call me or send me an email asking me what to do, because this bear only comes in at 3 a.m. There's nothing you can do. You ruined it right from the start. So, okay. Now, but that's kind of scheduled. Now, I was telling you about, I started telling you about the biggest bears I've ever taken. I never got till the 4th day. And when I got up there the day before the opener, and I went out with bait, refreshing the bait in my bait cribs, the food was all gone. You know, the logs of covering were scattered all over the place. You know, it looked like, I don't know what it looked like, but it was sure a mess. But every scrap of food was gone except for the skins from watermelon. They'll eat it right down to the green. And the husk from corn on the cob, that'll be there. But otherwise, everything is gone. And so then I'll bait up, and then wait. The reason I'm waiting is that the bear probably left and finally abandoned that food just a day or so before I got there with the fresh food. And now he's foraging on his big home range, and which means he won't be back for at least 4 days, sometimes 5. And it can get pretty boring, you know, bear hunting, you know, holding out for this really big bear for 4 days. Your bottom is really getting sore, you know, from sitting there in a tree stand. And but that's part of the game. And so I've learned that if you're going to hunt a big bear, plan on hunting at least 4 days. I mean, this time take 2 days off, you know, at work. Take 2 vacation days off, because if you don't, you're going to end up bringing food on the weekend, and you're going to see nothing. And then when you come back the next weekend, there'll be no bait. You have to redo it again, and you can do this endlessly till you can't stand it anymore. You're feeding the bear but never seeing him. You want to make sure you see your big bear, the really big bear. It doesn't work that way with the little bears, you know, on the sow range. The bears that weigh 250 pounds or less. But it sure works that way with the big bears. And so plan on 4 days. Then add another day, because plan on not getting that bear until half hour before sunset. So it's going to be full dark by the time you get over all the excitement and picture taking and all that. And you got this huge bear. And how are you going to get out of the woods? And you have to do it soon, because boy, can bear meat ever spoil quickly. With that hide they have and that thick fur on them, body heat can ruin bear meat in a hurry. And usually the first meat to spoil is in the shoulders of the bear, inside, in the shoulder meat inside. And if you just shoot that bear, and then so I will come out in the morning and get it, unless it's cool, you know, if it's 40 degrees, but it isn't often that way. You know, we hunt bears in September, beginning the 1st of September. You can have some pretty warm temperatures at that time. 40 degrees at night would be all right, as long as the bear is off the ground, like hung in a tree. I can do that myself with a rope and a come along and get them up there. I've done that several times. Leave them out at night if it's cool enough and is well field dressed, and you got sticks propping the body cavity opening so that cool air can cool off the whole inner side of the bear. But if it's not that way, you got to get that bear to a locker plant, a place that butchers deer and bear as soon as you can. Because if you leave it out there overnight under those circumstances, you're in big trouble. The only other alternative is butcher him on the spot where he is. Skin the bear, cut the bear into chunks. The front quarters are pretty long. Small enough pieces that you can put them in an ice chest filled with ice, those bear parts. And the hide also. The hide can spoil quickly too. And if it does, you're going to have hair falling off your beautiful bearskin rug soon. It's going to start falling apart. They call it slipping of the hair, patches of hair. So that bearskin, that's your trophy part. You want to get that off the bear with the head and paws intact, because you don't know how to prepare those for taxidermy. Leave those on, but from there on, so you got to know how to skin the bear for a bearskin rug. And usually, you slice him all the way down from under the chin, all the way down to his tail, and then each leg you slice him on the backside. And you got to do that a certain way, because if you don't, you're going to have some funny looking positions of the paws of the bear on your bearskin rug. You got to know how to do that. But anyway, you skin them, and you get that hide into a cooler with ice. I've known guys that are out in the wilderness, up in the Boundary Waters canoe area or up in Canada, and they had this situation. They had to cut the bear, skin the bear and cut it into parts, and they put them in plastic bag, double plastic bag, tied really tight, and drop them in the cold water of a nearby river or lake to cool it down. And then they were all right. They had until the next morning or next noon to get the meat and hide out of there to a butcher and still have it be okay. But so that's a busy time. So you get that bear on the fourth day. It might be the third day, it might be the second, but it could be the fourth day before you see that bear. Now here he comes finally. And you can't believe, look at that thing. You couldn't wait. This is what you've been waiting for and working for. Well, so he comes in, and I remember one year when I had to do this, I brought a tarp out there, so I put the bear on there. I didn't want to be butchering it on the ground, get it all dirty, big tarp. And over the tarp, I erected a screen tent. And I had a lantern, gas lantern, and hang that up in the screen tent. So I had a place free of mosquitoes at night and good lights, and so I could skin that bear. One bear I shot, it was really a big one, and I couldn't leave it out overnight because we did have 40 degrees, and I had it hung up, a good-sized bear. And I left a lantern, electric lantern, that would go all night, underneath the bear. I had it on so that if any creatures like a wolf came along and decided they might want to try some bear meat, this light would help keep them away. So I got out there in the morning, got him down from there, and I had my big long toboggan I used for hauling, and laid the bear down on a tarp, and roll him up in that tarp, and tie the ends with rope like a Tootsie Roll, and roll that thing onto the sled and tie a rope across the top from these holes I made so he won't fall off. And then a long rope in front and a loop on both sides, and then I bring it up, I'll have the loop like this, and I'll put the loop back up behind my neck like that, and my arms across the top, and so I end up with the rope there, and it goes around my arms, my shoulders. Step into the loop, and you put this up over your head, back of your neck, you're ready to go. And then I can lean forward and pull that sled. So when I tightened up the rope on that bear, I couldn't move it. I could jerk pretty hard, maybe get a few inches of, holy cow. It was going to be a good quarter mile to the truck, my pickup. How am I going to get it there? So the only thing to do, I think I'll skin out the hindquarters. So I thought, maybe if I get the hindquarters out of there, then I'll be able to move it. So that's what I did. I had to skin out the hindquarters, and so just the front quarters left then on the bear, and put those in a plastic bag, keep the flies off and that kind of thing during the day. And then tried it, and oh, now I could move that bear. Well, I got it to the truck finally. You become quite religious doing this if you're by yourself, because when you finally get to the truck, you're saying, "Thank God, it's finally there." Well, then I couldn't get it in the truck. I couldn't lift that, and so then I got this brilliant idea. I made a ladder. I didn't have nails along it. Tied the rungs with ropes. It's a ladder-like thing out of birch logs, and I had saw so I could cut them, and laid them up to the tailgate with the rung parts underneath. And then I could get on that ladder, sit on it, and get that sled right at the bottom and pull that thing up there, and I did it. Finally kept moving up the ladder, and I got the bear in the back of the truck, and then I went back and got the hindquarters, and then raced to this locker plant on the way home where I got all my bait to get it in there cooler. And I got it there just fine. It was just really good bear meat from that old situation. So you got to count on that. So you're going to ruin another day. So instead of 2 days off, ask for 3, just to make sure that you have enough time to take care of that bear and its hide and its meat, after you get the bear. So anyway, and so that's what you got to figure on when you're hunting a big bear. That's the way you should do it. And if you don't, if you just figure you're just going to hunt weekends, I can almost guarantee you what's going to happen. You're going to feed that bear and never see it. So that's what you got to do. Okay, back to bait. Now, I've got a lot to talk about when it comes to bait. So first thing I use lots of different kinds of bait. And usually, in the neighborhood of 10, 12 different varieties of things that I put in that bait crib. And the reason is, the more you have, the better it competes with wild food or possibly bait provided by some other hunter. And most of the baits I use, I've proven bears are really crazy about them. They just love these baits. Sometimes it was a mistake, like dried dog food. I've been camping, a dog in camp, and he's got a dish there with some dog food in it, the dried stuff, the pellet kind of stuff. And I've had bears just give us all kinds of trouble at night trying to get at that, and the dog going crazy because he smells the bears and hears them outside the tent, and this kind of crazy. You have to finally get up, go put that food in the truck, lock it up, and even then the bear might not stay around. And one night, my dog, young dog, he was only 6 months old, a golden retriever, he got up and disappeared out there in the dark, and I was out there calling, "Where are you?" And I couldn't hear him. It was all quiet, and finally I said, "Well, I'll just have to, there's nothing I can do, I'll have to wait till morning." Well, I got up in the morning, and not too far away, maybe half a block away, there was my dog sitting there looking up in a tree. And walked over there, he had a mama bear and 2 cubs in that tree all night. So, yeah, a crazy thing. But anyway, so you got, we got all that. Now let's get back to meat. So fresh meat, by all means use fresh meat. It's not legal in every state, like neighboring Wisconsin, they can't use meat. They can use vegetable products, things like that, and that's all right. but neat. Now I mentioned you're going to take 50, maybe up to 70 pounds of meat out there at one time, so that's almost half your sled full of stuff already. And then a bag of, I'd say about, 2 gallons at least of that dried dog food. Put it in a plastic bag and tie it up, and that goes on the sled. Take that out there. Another thing, pretty good size, I'll take quite a few apples, backyard apples. You know, I've got neighbors all around me that have apple trees. And they're always complaining apples, well, they forget to spray the trees and they can't even, they're all wormy and they're falling on the ground and they're fermenting. They're half rotten, you know. And I go around to all my neighbors and tell them, don't worry about your apples. I will clean them up for you. Every day I'll check for fallen apples and I'll sack them up and take them home for bear bait. And I keep them in a barrel there by the garage. And, and that is excellent bear bait, especially if they're half rotten and fermenting. That extra fermenting smell is excellent for bear bait. And so I got a good sized plastic bag with a bunch of those, maybe up to a peck at a time. That goes on the sled. Now we're getting some really weight on there. Now that's my favorite fruit, but there's one of my favorite fruits to bring out there, but there's one I like even better. For each bait site, I bring in a half of a watermelon. Oh, bears love watermelon. But you know, it's really funny about watermelon. Most bears have never tasted watermelon in their life, and this would be the first time. And some of them won't even eat it the first time, they'll just leave it there. But by the second time you bait it, it's all eaten except for the green rinds, you know. But once they decide to eat it and they taste it, they just love that watermelon. And watermelon has a lot of great sweet odor. And to make sure I get maximum odor, I take that watermelon and I bring it to that bait site and I smash it on the ground in the bait crib or on the side of one of the logs that, you know, of the crib. So I got lots of little parts, you know, that'd be parts maybe that big and smaller, but lots of surface, lots of good odor coming from that watermelon. That is really, really super bait for bears. Now, vegetables. There's lots of vegetables that are pretty decent bear bait. One that I found is really excellent is corn on the cob. And there again, a lot of the wilderness bears that I've ever had, they know nothing about corn. They've never seen it before. And there again, I've come out there after a week and everything's eaten up, but here's these cobs of corn just laying there and they haven't been touched. You know, they're still in the husk. Well, once a bear tries that, they'll eat every little kernel off the cob. Look like a human took their time and ate that corn off the cob. It's all clean, not one kernel left. So usually I'll go up, when I'm heading north for baiting, I would stop at little roadside stands where people are selling corn on the cob and tomatoes and other things along the highway. And I always get about a dozen corn on the cob to add to my sled. So corn on the cob is real good. And to give the bear a better chance of getting started, if they've never seen corn before, I'll pull the husks back on one side so they can see the corn, and then they can get down and sniff that and taste that. And once they get on that, I can't wait to get back and have some of that corn. So, gee, this thing, you know, what we're putting out there is really pretty special. But there's other vegetables, you know, you wouldn't think of that be any great thing, but let's say after dinner tomorrow and you have some green beans on the table or salad, and kids are frowning, they don't like that green stuff and they don't like salad. Anything left over like that, and mashed potatoes and gravy and peas or whatever, put them in the bag rather than throw in that garbage. Put in the bag and seal it, or seal the bag, put it in the freezer. And add some of it. You've got 2, 3, maybe a month of those in there in the freezer. All that, those little food things like that. And put, you know, a sack of those on your sled too. All these different flavors and smells that are going to be in there, along with the gravy and that kind of stuff, going to be great bear bait, really good. For years, I had a son-in-law who worked for a food distributor, and he was able to come up with boxes of dated fruit preserves, and like blueberries and strawberries and raspberries, and there were some things like, there were some fruits that weren't so great, but most of them, they were sweet fruits. Man, that was somebody dumped. They had a plastic bag that this was in inside of a box, and you could pour that, and boy, you talk about some great bake. But you can, if you can find that, that's part of the skill. You might talk to your grocer, favorite grocer, talk to them, and say, what do you do with your dated sweets, fruits and candies and things like that? Well, usually the distributor picks them up. They have dates on them. If they're dated, they take them back. Well, who's the distributor? And they'll tell you. Then call that distributor and ask them if you can, if they purchase some of their dated sweets, like I'm telling you about. I remember one year I got a great big box of peppermint patties. And I spent more time unwrapping all those patties. I had them unwrapped when I brought them to camp. And so each time I had to do some baiting, I had to get a whole bunch of those. I'd bring a sack of those peppermint patties out there. And there's other sweets like syrups and molasses that can act as excellent bear bait. Maybe not a lot of volume, but you take like a little quart jar of molasses and bring out there and glug that around on those covering logs of your bait crib. That's a lot of good odor coming out of there. So that's excellent too, something like that. I've heard of people favoring oil of anise and somebody using a peppermint syrup and things like that. So there's a lot of different kinds of sweets. Another kind you can get is you go to a bakery. Their dated stuff they throw away. A lot of them are happy to get rid of all these 4-day-old donuts. Take all you want. I used to know a guy that was only baits to use. I kept telling him I use these other things. He was not having much luck, and one day he asked me, come and look at his bed and see if you can figure out why the heck I'm not seeing any bears. When he had a tarp over this pile. The pile must have been 4 feet tall and about 5 feet in diameter. And he took that off and it was green. It was covered with green mold, fuzzy mold, the whole pile. And it was reeking with that. And said, no wonder bears would never touch something like that. He couldn't figure out why bears would touch it. That's trouble. If you go with one thing, I've known guys that have gotten a big sack of donuts and they go out in the woods and dump it in there, and get up in a tree stand and shoot a bear the first day. Maybe 100-pound bear, about that long. But it doesn't hold up well. And once it's moldy, the bears aren't going to eat it. They just leave it alone. So most of the other stuff I've given you has got it'll last a while. It'll keep attracting bears for several days without any problem. But if you get some donuts, bring in some, if they're nice and fresh. And maybe a more limited, not a huge pile like this guy did. So here's another one, like in Wisconsin. They can't use meat and that kind of thing, but there's another kind of vegetable bait you can make yourself that's terrific. Bears love it. Get a new garbage can, plastic one or metal, it doesn't matter, but a new garbage can, maybe 30-gallon size, that size, not a real big one, and dump in there about 10 gallons of corn or barley or wheat. Corn is great though. Dump about 10 gallons. When you can buy a sack at Walmart of corn, I think it comes to about 10 gallons of it. Dump that in there. And then dump in about 5 gallons of water. And then dump in about 10 pounds of sugar. Stir it up real good. Put the cover on and leave it alone for a couple weeks. You do this a couple weeks early. It'll ferment. It gets great, really great odor, and it's sweet. And a lot of guys out there, they can use barrels for bait sites out in Wisconsin. We can't here in Minnesota, no metal barrels. But they use metal barrels, and the kind of lower part is not open along the bottom, and they get all this corn bait in there that's fermented, and that's all they use, and get bears. And you can get bears that way. I think once a bear gets on that, they'll pretty much stay on it. But if you got, 20 guys in the surrounding mile with fermented corn bait, you're not going to have a huge advantage over these other guys. They have another problem in Wisconsin. They allow bear hunting with dogs, and the dogs, they can run dogs on bears to get them trained 2 weeks before the hunting season. And where do they start these bears, these dogs on bears? Is at somebody else's bait sites, And so when the season starts, there's no bears going to the bait site because they've been chased off by dogs. So, yeah, the stand hunters out there complain a lot about that, but that's never changed in many years. Well, anyway, that recipe for making bait from corn is in the book, in the bear book, or barley or whatever, and other baits are all discussed in great detail in here as well. So this this is your bear hunting Bible. It's got everything you need to know, things like that. Okay, and then we talked about squeaks also. So we've got the squeak part pretty well taken care of now too. Now there's one other bait we use, and which you can generally get free, lots of it, and that's used cooking oil. You go to any chicken or hamburger place where they do a lot of deep frying, like for French fries and onion rings, things like that, and chicken. They get rid of that oil regularly because they have to, and they have 5-gallon pails of the stuff, sitting around, and they have people that come and get it, but you can get it too. You can go talk to people in places like that and ask them if you can get some of that used cooking oil. And usually I only use it on my first baiting. And so what I usually put is I pour about 2.5 gallons of cooking oil in the dirt around my bait crib, all around it. Lots of odor coming from it. Oh, bears think that smells wonderful. Like a hamburger or French fry or whatever, chicken. Oh boy, they love that. Now, that not only provides a lot of good odor, but when the bear comes to your bait crib, they walk in that. You get it all over the pads of their feet. And wherever they walk away from there, they make trails of that odor that lead to your bait site. It's like spokes of a wheel to your bait site. That's because we've always done that, my boys and I, right from the beginning. If you're on a sow range, and if that sow has a couple cubs and some adults living on her range from previous years of raising cubs, you can get a lot of bears coming from different angles. You'll see trails coming from different angles to your bait sites very soon because of all this used cooking oil odors being spread all over the place by bears. And so that's a good way to get a lot of bears to a bait site. If you're hunting in a boar range, you won't get a lot of bears, but one bear doing that might get other big bears coming to. I've had as many as 3 bears that went over 300 pounds coming to the same bait site because their ranges overlapped one another. And so that can happen. So that's a good idea to do that. An even better one is, well, I shouldn't say better, but another thing I always did, which we can do here in Minnesota, I'd save bacon grease No, you fry bacon, then pour the grease out of the pan into this coffee can. If I get a big coffee can or grease from other frying different meats, it all goes in there. And it's semi-solid, not completely, but, and a cover on it, so keep it in the refrigerator. And it was time for that initial baiting. I take that out there. I got everything else done now. I got all this food in the bait crib. I got it covered with these heavy 6-foot long covering logs, which protect it from other critters until the bears open it. But they also acted to let me know how big that bear is. I had one guy tell me he uses his barrel to tell him how big a bear is, and I suppose that's pretty good too. I don't think barrels get to be 6 feet long, but it can be, if it's 5 feet long or even 4, you say, well, it's a foot longer, that's a 250-pound bear. If it's 2 feet longer, that's a big bear. So anyway, but what I do with this bacon grease, because winds generally, are from the west, that's their most prevailing wind, I'll take an old paintbrush, big wide one, big paintbrush of my bacon grease, and I will march along a line straight south for about a quarter mile and paint it, and on rough bark of trees every 5 to 10 yards apart. Went straight south. You get half of it on all those trees, up off the ground, up here. Then I'll go back to my bait site and march off another quarter-mile line going as straight north as possible. And so what I end up with is a line of bacon grease, you know how that smells, a half-mile long. And with the wind blowing from the west, that odor spreads out, like let's say a quarter-mile downwind, that line is maybe a mile wide already, and the bears will come to the odor, and geez, they'll follow that line of trees with all the bacon grease licking the bark and that kind of thing. And they, oh, look what we got here. All this good food here. So that's the kind of stuff you got to do to compete with wild foods. When they got a lot of blueberries or other kinds of berries in the woods, or raspberries, you got to have some pretty good stuff here, and a lot of it to make the bear think, I want this. Those blueberries, they just can't compete with this stuff here. And you're competing with other hunters. It's inevitable that that's part of what you're doing. And if you don't do a good job of baiting and providing a really good bait like I'm talking about, somebody else is going to get your bait. You might sit there for a month and never see the bear because it's dead. There's a chance that happened. Maybe somebody else did a better job of baiting. Speaking of baiting, and I write this in my book, back in the old days, which I think it's illegal now, but there's three ways to start baiting, and one of them was use a scattergun approach. People would get bait, things that bears like to eat, and put them in gunny sacks, and then put a whole bunch of gunny sacks all over the place, wherever they can think of putting them, in trees, hang them in trees, tie them to trees, up off the ground, maybe that high. And then come back a week later and see if bears have gotten them, and gee, there's a bag all tore up and it's on the ground, all the bait's gone, and maybe here's some tracks, around the tree, big tracks, scratch marks on the tree. And so, wow, this is a place to hunt. Well, I call that a scattergun approach. But it really is unfair to other hunters in the area to do something like that. And I'm not sure, that's wasting a whole week of conditioning. Part of what you're doing when you're providing bait, every time that bear comes to the bait, he smells you. He smells your mosquito lotion. This is part of what he gets. It's part of what this bait provides. It's getting that bear used to your odors. And the reason it's important is that when the day finally comes and you're going to be sitting 9 feet up in this tree here, he's going to smell you there. But he has not very good eyesight, and if you're well camouflaged, no bare skin showing, and you're sitting there really quiet, when he looks up there, I smell him, but you won't be able to distinguish you as a human sitting up there. I'm not so sure that's always entirely true. I've seen bears. I've had bears that caught me when I moved up there. They moved and they swung up and looked up there and looked at this point, you know, maybe saying, well, he's not coming down, he's not doing anything threatening, I'm just going to eat here, and he can lump it up there as far as I'm concerned. But I have never hunted bears, older bears, without them looking at me in the tree 3 or 4 times before I finally shot it. Well, I've had a couple that came in real quick and they went right to my positioning bait and pow. Now, that positioning bait, we're going to have to talk about positioning bait on my next session. That's real. One of the most important things I ever discovered, the use of positioning bait in bear hunting. And it makes bear hunting a lot safer, a lot surer. It makes it a sport you can use a bow to kill a bear and be as deadly as a gun because of positioning bait. So there's a lot to know about that. So we'll talk about that next time. So with that, be sure to get your bear book. You know, right now I'm just finishing my August articles. There are 2 magazine articles I write a month, sometimes more. But I'm just finishing. One is completely ready to go, and the other one is nearly ready to go. And that means before long I'll be writing about hunting. I'll be writing about deer hunting in September. You know, both seasons begin in the middle of September already, almost everywhere in the United States. So we're getting close to the time when you got to start putting some serious thought into how you're going to get a buck this year, which you know is pretty hard to do. But you can do it if you do things right. So if you haven't got that book yet, you'll want this one, this monster book. This is going to pay off for you for the rest of your life, this book. Well, it's going to make you a regularly successful buck hunter. So be sure to order one soon. And like I said before, you know, with a book like this, you can't just go to the store and buy one. You can't buy one in a store right now anyway, but you can't just buy this one and say, oh yeah, that's kind of nice, and then you're all set. This is going to take some study and some things you're going to be doing in the woods this year that you've never done before the season even begins to get ready, that are really essential for regular buck hunting success. So don't wait till the last minute to get your book. Get it soon so you can be ready when the season starts, and then once it starts, to be doing everything right then. You know, I've been talking to you, I'll be going back to about taking precautions. It's the precautions you take that make your deer hunting method great. The best for taking big bucks to begin with are stand hunting. Not necessarily tree stand, but at ground level as well. But to make stand hunting work, you got to take 30-some precautions every day you hunt. How about that? Every day. If you mess up with one, it ruins all the others. You aren't going to be successful. If you miss one, you can't go through the rest of your life saying, nobody can get to a tree stand in the dark without messing up your hunting, without spooking deer around the tree stand. If you're convinced that the rest of your life, you're never going to be a regularly successful buck hunter. Forget that. Quit being negative about new and different things. You can't say one way or another that you can't do it or nobody else can do it if you've never tried it. Well, you'll probably try it, but doing the way you've done it, that's how you came to this conclusion. It's been wrong. You didn't take the right precautions in doing it. And that's why it didn't work for you. And just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it can't be done. My boys have been doing it my 3 boys for 29 years successfully. And now I've got grandsons, 3 of them, that are as good as their fathers, if not better, that can do it as well too. But if you've never done it, you don't have a chance. You got to learn how to do it properly. And anybody that says it can't be done, I can prove to you that you can do it. But you got to take 30-some precautions to do it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So, if you really want to take big bucks, this is what you got to do. So, get over that. Get used to it. Things have got to be different when not big bucks. So, with that, thank you for watching, and be sure to sign up for my account. There's a little button down here, the red one. Poke that one. Doesn't cost you anything, and you'll be helping me in a way you don't understand. But I appreciate that help, becoming a regular watcher of my deer hunting seminars. But and you'll get a notice on the internet every time I submit a new one or post a new one. So, but we have a lot to learn there. I can't wait. We got to get through this bear thing a little bit, and it might take a couple more sessions to do that. But and I'll try to do it soon, because before you know it, September 1st is going to be here, and you can start baiting 2 weeks before that. There's lots to learn yet. So, but thank you for watching. I enjoyed teaching you guys. I'm so glad I've done all this research, and I'm so glad I love to teach. You can tell I'm a teacher for sure. And so, looking forward to seeing you again, and thanks again for watching. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries. And be sure to sign up for my email updates. Here you'll also find deer and bear hunting articles, my website bookstore, and much more.